before we begin. All votes taken in this meeting will be done by roll call vote. If Zoom crashes, the meeting will be continued to December 12th, 2023. First up, we'll take a roll call attendance of DRB members for tonight's meeting. Nate Andrews.
Here.
Paul Christensen.
Present.
Lisa Braden Harder.
Present.
Scott Riley.
Here.
Dave Turner.
Here.
John Hemmelgarn.
Here.
The chair is present. All are in attendance, 7 in total. Okay. At this point, I'll turn it over to Andrew for some Zoom instructions.
It'll be me this evening.
Okay.
So welcome, folks. We have
For business is a public forum. This is an opportunity for people present here in the room or participating by Zoom to address the board on issues that are not on tonight's agenda. Is there anyone in the audience or on Zoom who would like to address the board?
no chats and no raised hands on Zoom.
Okay, next up is the public hearing. We've got one item on the agenda tonight. It's DP 24-07. This is a pre-app for WSW Investments LLC. It's for a 26,900 square foot expansion at 34 Commerce Street. And while expanding parking into a residential area currently occupied with 2 residential homes at 5190 and 5222 Williston Road. Would the applicant come forward, please? Good evening. If you would state your name and address for the record, please.
My name is Richard Hamlin. My address is Post Office Box 9, Essex Junction.
Pierre Simard, 34 Commerce Street, Wilson.
Welcome both. Staff goes first.
All right. This is a pre-application request for a proposed industrial building expansion and a parking lot expansion. The property overall is just under 4 acres. The proposed use is industrial. It has access on a state road, Williston Road, aka Route 2, as well as a town road, Commerce Street. The zoning districts involved are Industrial Zoning District West, Gateway Zoning District West, and the Residential Zoning District. This property was subject to design review, but not Conservation Commission review. Planning staff is recommending that the DRB take testimony and close the hearing and deliberate and approve a list of recommendations. There are several recommendations where the DRB must make a decision. Those are bolded in your staff report. Planning staff is also requesting a legal opinion on the matter of industrial access drive and parking lot in non-industrial zoning districts. I'll get into that in a moment. So property history, in 2014, there was an unauthorized grading, followed up in 2015 by application for just under 40,000 square foot industrial warehouse and office building. Some on the board may recall in 2020 and 2021, and it's a specific plan application to change the zoning district boundary for these parcels. That did not move forward. It was denied by the Planning Commission. So everything tonight is following the bylaws as they are standing today. The advisory committee, the HDAC, commented on this application. I do note that in that October 2023 bylaw revision, they were renamed. They are no longer the HAC. Interdepartmental comment, Public Works and Fire did comment on this application. Their recommendations are included. However, I do note that the fire department comments are a plan review standard, which is a select board policy, not an ordinance. And their comments are only applicable to the extent that they can be enforced by and do not conflict with the Unified Development Bylaws, as well as the Public Works specifications where applicable. One comment letter was received at the time of mail out, and I don't think we received anything to date. So only one comment letter. And briefly, before I go deeper in the staff report, I'm just going to pull up the sketch plan to show the zoning district boundaries. So that main building that exists today is in the industrial zoning district. The two additions are also within the industrial zoning district. And that proposed parking is the front half is in Gateway West, where it has frontage along Williston Road. That access drive and parking circulates around through the residential zoning district and back into industrial. So proposed use, the use is New England Chimney Supply. They manufacture chimney liners and caps and other chimney accessories, as well as their accessory warehousing, so raw materials and finished products and shipping, as well as the office that's accessory to those two uses. And I did have an opportunity to tour the facility on November 15th and observe all their production lines and assembly and equipment that includes, I would call light industrial uses like plasma and laser cutters, a soldering station, powder coating. But I didn't have to wear like a face masks or a helmet or anything. So it was a light industrial operation. In terms of setbacks, the front yard setback is 25 feet in the Gateway district and 35 feet in the industrial. Pedestrian sidewalks are permitted within that setback, and the maximum building height in all districts is 36 feet. Outdoor sales and storage. So that original discretionary permit DP 1515 did not show outdoor storage. However, there is some outdoor storage at the rear of the building. The discretionary permit must demonstrate that the outdoor storage areas comply, that they're located inside or rear setbacks. And the DP must also demonstrate how outdoor storage of materials, equipment, or work areas will be operationally contained within the industrial zoning district and not spill over to Gateway West or residential. Those are zoning districts where outdoor storage is outright prohibited. Legal opinion. So we're recommending that you seek a legal opinion related to parking and vehicular access and whether they are allowed in non-industrial districts as discussed below. So Chapter 7 defines access drives and off-street parking loading as required improvements, which is any improvement, public or private, required for compliance with the bylaw. In short, a new use or building cannot be permitted if it does not meet the requirements for adequate parking and safe legal access. However, parking lots are explicitly referenced in Chapter 17 as, quote, customary accessory use allowed in all zoning districts, though that same language doesn't apply to parking access drives. It's only for parking lots. Furthermore, in parking, NEICS code 812-930 defines parking lots and garages as a use. However, that use code is not allowed in any of these three zoning districts, meaning a standalone parking lot cannot be permitted as the primary use. It can only be, as Chapter 17 says, accessory to a different primary use. In the access driveway, the proposal shifts the private access driveway into the gateway and residential districts. Truck traffic is a component of the industrial use. Trucks deliver raw materials and take outgoing shipments, including their own vehicles and rental delivery trucks and parcel services like UPS and FedEx. The industrial building use would not comply with the bylaw's parking and access requirements without this access. For example, if the only access was the loading area off Commerce Street, then large trucks and tractor trailers would likely need to use Commerce Street to back into or out of the loading area. On to access, Chapter 13. Access onto Williston Road is improved in compliance with the bylaws. 2 residential driveways are eliminated. And the access driveway also serves as the parking lot drive aisle. Though the bylaw does not have an outright prohibition on this design, it's not ideal because it creates possible pedestrian conflicts with industrial truck traffic navigating the site, as well as customers or employees parking or walking to the entrance. No change to access is proposed on Commerce Street. However, the DRB and applicant should discuss the northeasternmost curb cut on Commerce Street. It currently serves a 30-space parking lot that is going to be replaced with that 11,000 square foot addition. At the HAC meeting, HDAC meeting, the applicant clarified that they're not sure if that curb cut is to remain, and if it does, it might be used for deliveries, that sort of thing. Traffic study, so they're going to be required to provide their trip generation data. Beyond that, the DRB can require a traffic study. They can waive the requirement with the advice of DPW, though DPW did not comment on it. And I do note that because this property has access onto a state highway, they'll be required to meet all state permitting requirements. Off-street parking and loading. So the discretionary permit must show a parking lot calculation based on the primary industrial use as well as the office use. And the circulation within off-street parking loading areas must show that pedestrians have access in and around the parking area. Lastly, the discretionary permit must show bicycle parking and an end-of-trip facility, which is basically a shower and locker room. On-site infrastructure, circulation. So the discretionary permit must include a sidewalk along the property's Williston Road frontage. And the DRB may consider requiring it along Commerce Street as well. 15.2.4 states, must sidewalks or recreation paths be provided along roads? And the standard says that they must be provided on both sides of proposed roads. However, recent DRB precedent has interpreted that standard to include existing roads, not just proposed. For example, the build out of the Robert lots, U-Haul along Williston Road and Shumpike Road, as well as many other places in town where expansions or development are proposed on an existing street. The sidewalk is also shown on official map, which means that the developer must accommodate it, i.e. not placing anything that would prevent that improvement in the future, such as a building and possibly underground stormwater. There is a provision in 15.2.4 that the DRB could limit the requirement for a sidewalk in areas of low commercial or industrial low intensity commercial industrial development. However, this is in high intensity area, it's on transit, so we do not recommend that exemption. Discretionary permit must show compliance with utilities and municipal water and sewer per the public works specs. Maintenance, the snow storage and removal plan, a DP must show that snow storage doesn't obstruct pedestrian ways, and if it's stored in a landscape area, that the plantings meet 353, which is that they're salt tolerant. Solid waste dumpsters must be screened with a fence or wall, and chapter 23 also states that a dense evergreen hedge can be required. However, the DRB can permit an exception where there are space constraints. Planning staff is recommending that exception from the hedge. Just screen the dumpsters with a fence or wall because the existing dumpster location in the loading area is paved on all sides. It's very small and compact, and that dumpster loading area is abutting a neighboring industrial use. So I'm recommending that exemption. Chapter 17. So the discretionary permit must include a construction phasing plan, particularly that equipment and materials are stored so they do not constitute an attractive nuisance. This must include something like fencing, and the fencing must be in place before site clearing and grading begins. Chapter 18. So this is our compatibility, potential hazards, and nuisance chapter. When I toured the facility on November 15th, it was a light industrial use. During the specific plan process, there were some concerns from abutting neighbors about noise associated with some of the mechanical equipment. That was a metal cutting machine that they replaced with a laser cutter that is less noisy and impactful in terms of generating vibrations and booms. The loading dock is about 200 feet from the property line and houses at 67 and 83 Kirby Lane. And the access drive shifts into Gateway West, thus shifting ingoing and going delivery trucks closer to residential homes. What follows for Chapter 18 is a list of reports that need to be provided at discretionary permit, showing how exhaust vent stacks and fans are not directing odors or smoke onto adjacent properties or public ways. If there's hazardous materials, that there be a hazardous materials plan that's reviewed by the fire department. Hours of operation, so provide a typical daily, weekly schedule, including deliveries, loading, and waste collection. Light and glare, we're anticipating compliance here. There are no outdoor work areas existing or proposed. Thus, any intense sources of light from the plasma, cutting machines, etc., are all indoors. Noise, there must be a sound study provided, and this staff report covers some of the particulars of what that sound study needs to show. And the DRB should be aware and discuss with the applicant that hours of operation can be limited and/or that landscape berms, walls, or soundproofing architectural techniques may be required. I do note that during that specific plan process, there was a discussion of a sound barrier wall. It looked like a fence, but it had wood paneling on both sides and was designed in a way to attenuate noise. And screening. This also refers back to 23 as well, but the discretionary permit must show how roof and ground mounted utility installations and mechanical equipment will be screened. And the DRB should be aware and discuss with an applicant that a fence or wall can be provided where landscape screening isn't feasible. And lastly, provide a report about vibration. So we don't expect any from this use. A design review, so the HDAC reviewed this on November 7th, and their recommendations are included. In general, they felt like the design standards of Chapter 22 can be met by bolstering the architectural design and entryway features, that new western entrance, and providing for pedestrian connectivity to that entrance. Landscaping. So the DRB and applicant should discuss if a type 2 or 3 buffer is preferred where the property abuts the residential homes at 67 and 83 Kirby Lane, as well as 5182 Williston Road. Where the DRB requires a berm or fence, the buffer can be reduced by 25%. That would mean about a 17-foot wide type 2 buffer or 27-foot wide type 3 buffer. A type 2 buffer must be supplemented by a type 3 or 4 buffer, and I recommend a type 3 buffer because type 4 is defined as being most appropriate for uses of similar intensity. The DRB can require a berm and fence, and staff recommends that along the property lines with 67 and 83 Kirby Lane and 5182 Williston Road. The bylaw states.
I'm sorry, can you identify which are 67 and 83?
Yes. I might get them backwards, but one of these is 67 and one of these is, they're
Okay.
along.
I don't think it matters which is which.
Yeah. They would run along the edge of the new parking lot, and there is an existing hedge within that area.
Great, thank you.
And then 5182, its driveway is in Gateway, and then it's up near that northern parking lot. So front yard buffer along the parking lot. Typically, only a street tree section is required. The HDAC recommended that the entire streetscape, or noted that the entire streetscape in Gateway is dominated by parking, and considered an additional planting buffer, more than just the street tree requirement to buffer the view. That's a similar recommendation to what the Hack and DRB worked on for U-Haul. And then I list a couple other considerations. Landscape buffers along the abutting industrial uses, and retaining existing vegetation. Street trees, the discretionary permit must identify existing street trees and their protection during construction, and propose additional trees if needed to ensure compliance with the 40-foot spacing requirement, while also maintaining compliance at corners and intersections. So that 40 feet might vary a little bit for vision triangles. Watershed health, an erosion and runoff control plan at discretionary permit. That's a standard recommendation. Outdoor lighting is a very specific recommendation. And the lighting plan should be structured so that it provides the required metrics based on both the location, industrial gateway or residential district, as well as the area of illumination, parking, building, and loading area or security lighting. What follows is a table that summarizes the bylaw metrics in terms of lumens per acre or foot candles, and whether staff anticipates compliance or if there's a particular note that discretionary permit needs to address. Signs and impact fees are also standard conditions. If they're going to do signs larger or more numerous than what's allowed in the table, the discretionary permit must include a master sign plan. And transportation impact fees are assessed at the time of administrative permit. And then what follows is the list of recommendations with bolded text indicating a DRB edit. Thank you.
Thanks, Emily. Thorough as usual. Appreciate the work. Okay, so where I'd like to start is for the applicant to walk us through the site plan. And if maybe if staff could display it on the screen, that would be great. And is there a laser pointer or?
Yeah, if Rick talks, I'll annotate with the.
Great. Okay. Perfect.
Fair enough. So let's start with the existing building, which is the gold with the darker brown band. That is the structure that exists today on the site. And presently the parking area is just to the east along Commerce Street, where you see the other gold box. And that parking area would be taken up by a proposed building addition. And then if we go to the west, the other kind of oblong golden form would be the additional building projection right up to that zoning boundary line. And so control is of all of the 3 lots that you see here. And so within this lot owned by under single ownership, we've got the 3 different zones. So the thought was under the specific plan process, we were actually going to move and expand the building a little farther west than it would have been into the other zones. But that process we were denied, as you may recall. So we're back coming with the concept that we believe meets the rules, which is to put all of the use in the zone where it's permitted. And in the other 2 zones would be just parking. And staff notes that trucks would be coming in and out of this new entryway, and that's actually not correct. Trucks would only be coming in. So trucks would enter from Route 2 and go to the loading dock and exit as they do now onto Commerce. So trucks would not be coming out of that exit. I suspect that V-Trans will require the same standards that they did for the other entrance, which was entrance only for trucks, and the trucks would exit on Commerce. Vehicular traffic, cars in the parking lot would go in both directions, but trucks would only be going southbound in and around to the dock and then exit to Commerce.
And how would the loading dock, walk us through the loading dock, like a truck comes in and.
Sure. Let me just go up here.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
So right now, the curb cut exists here, and the existing drive comes down, and trucks come up and access these dock areas. Now the trucks would come in and back into the dock areas. So instead of coming this way, we're just moving that over and making their maneuver, instead of from here to there. From here to there. So same final movement, it's just, we're gonna.
Rick, don't leave there. Nice try. So can you point out exactly where the loading dock is and which is the wall that the trucks are backing up to?
So there's dock here, and an elevated dock here. So there's dock access into the building all along this face.
Facing south?
Yeah,
Okay, so they have to back up to that?
to the dock, yes. And
It's
so
a typical alley dock, it's not a big deal.
this is the preferred trucking movement to access the dock. So when you're backing, the driver's looking into their mirror, and the trailer in the back versus backing the opposite way, which puts you looking out the passenger. So this is a really common dock, preferred dock movement.
And when a truck is backed up to the loading dock area, there's still adequate space to get through?
Plenty of clearance.
Okay.
How big of a truck is coming in there? Full-size semi-tractor trailer?
You never get a WB 62, probably in the
Yeah,
50s.
yeah,
So
53-foot trailer.
yeah.
Okay. And the building appears to be a 0 lot line?
Well, no, because it's all one lot.
Okay.
So our setbacks are shown on the plans that respect each individual zone. And it respects this front setback, and it respects this rear setback, and this building is on this setback.
Oh, so it's
What
gonna-
you're meaning is it's just a 0 lot line to the other development sections, right?
The zone, we're building our use to the limit of the zone.
district, yeah.
I wasn't considering that it was all one lot, so thank you.
So if you scroll down just a little bit, so as I mentioned, the parking is just parking. So the dumpsters, any outdoor storage, everything is going to stay in the industrial zone. This is employee, this is parking for visitors, parking for customers. We anticipate that now all of the office is kind of on this section of the existing building. All of that you flip to this side. So this would be the public face of the building. Building treatment on this side would reflect what was done on this corner. If you may recall, it's stone, lower band windows, kind of a change in elevation. Yeah, it's a pretty picture. So here we are looking at that corner, that northeast corner. And so this appearance would now move and be duplicated on that other face. So as you approach the building from either direction, now if we go back to those pictures, the stone work ends. We scroll.
Oh, yep, I know what you're talking about.
There's a photo of the other corner here. Yeah, there we go. So right now, the stone band ends here. As the building goes out, the stone band would continue to wrap, and then this face and the face in this direction would have this appearance. And so it would cap west end of the building, it would look similar to the east. So right now, what you're looking at is the access drive back to the loading docks.
And the building height would be envisioned to be similar?
I think that's the current plan, although the hack was, had some thoughts about, as we got closer to the residential, to maybe drop the building down, elevate you down somewhat to soften its impact to the residential. We're really looking for your input tonight. If it looks like a way forward, then the building uses would be figured out and how that would all work and where a mezzanine would be desired or not. But certainly no higher. If we could go back to the site plan. So, and just slide this down a little bit. This driveway, everything here stays the same, no changes to our exit point. If we pull this down, so currently there's a very dense hedge here. When we spoke with the hack, they thought it would be a good idea to have some fencing here to here where this wasn't quite so dense. And also there was some thought about maybe a screening fence along Route 2 or trees. So, and it certainly makes sense to put some fencing in here. And we know the staff's comments about adding fencing here. We've got quite a bit of distance between the parking area and the property line. So there's some room in there to do a fence or vegetation or whatever seems to be preferred by the neighbors.
Yeah, have you had conversations with the neighbors?
We have not. They were notified of the hearing. We've got comments from the neighbor across the street.
Oh.
So we have received those comments. But again, probably the biggest point of discussion is the concept of use, building, all the ancillary things that go with it in the zone where it's permitted. And then the parking in the other zone, and the, I think it's 1771, and Emily quoted it, talks about parking as an ancillary use in every zone, so, which makes sense. You should have parking lots in every zone. Question being the drive. I guess our thought there is that in order to access a parking lot, you have to have a drive. And the question is, trucks that are there for the industrial use or for trucks, doesn't really matter the use, trucks going through the parking lot, is that an issue? And I guess it's, for us, it's not too much different than moving trucks in a residential zone or delivery trucks or, traveling through a residential district. It's traffic. There's no,
What's your count, basically?
how many trucks a day?
Less than a dozen a day.
Okay.
And that's 10-wheeler, like
Right.
box truck.
Big
I would
trucks,
say,
big trucks.
what do you count for tractor trailers?
Yeah, less than a dozen.
About a dozen?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and again, they would be traveling southbound through the parking lot, not south and northbound. So
Okay.
in terms of pedestrian conflict, not very frequent and only one direction. And so if there aren't any other questions, we'd welcome your input and thoughts about some of the staff comments and kind of give us a direction of where we might head.
Well, if you have the crew come in and do it correctly, you've got a whole bunch of fencing already there they can move.
It's true. Yeah, currently there is fence all along the property line.
Yeah.
DRB members, questions?
Another question.
John?
So you mentioned a dozen trucks, more or less. How early in the morning do those start coming?
Delivery trucks like that generally don't come in before, they generally, freight trucks load and are out of terminals by 9. So after 9, we have our own delivery trucks that get loaded and leave at like 5 in the morning currently.
But they exit the commerce.
They exit the commerce.
They're there overnight. They
They're
get
there
in the
all
afternoon or
overnight,
the
right?
evening,
So they get
load it
loaded,
up.
drivers come in at 5 in the morning, get in the truck and leave.
Doesn't include your trucks too,
No,
it does.
no. Because they don't come in that route, so.
How do they come in?
Well, they would come in that route, but not generally. So our trucks have basically 2 primary delivery days, Tuesdays and Thursdays. So they leave Tuesday mornings, they leave Thursday mornings. Now there's some daily routes, but it's not like we have all our trucks coming in every day and out every day. So it's, that dozen would probably include our trucks coming in on average.
Okay.
And our trucks are 26-foot box trucks.
And we're happy to talk to staff about the parking count. I mean, right now, your employee count is,
96.
yeah, and we've
How many?
96?
26. And you have how many spaces?
about 100 in that, and this is about 100 spaces.
So 2, I think it was. Yeah.
Would you anticipate additional employees with a 30,000 square foot addition?
There'll be some additional employees, yes.
Probably good to have, not one board member speaking, but it'd be good to have enough parking for all your employees.
Mhm.
Otherwise, there would be
should
parking in
have-
places they're not supposed to, and that tends to get neighbors upset.
Right.
And zoning administrators too.
Yeah. And we also have leases with a couple of neighbors on Commerce Street for additional parking.
So I would comment that as the DRB representative on the specific plan, that proposal, there was a lot of time spent discussing the border, with the neighbors and the noise. And it seems like the sound is something that you really need to, I would say, get in front of with the neighbors. And we're talking about fences, the sound attenuation fences, getting it so that if they can't see it, it helps. If they can't hear it, it's going to help a lot.
Well, and as Emily noted, one of the big sources of noise and vibration, the punch press, is no longer there. So that's a huge reduction in noise and vibration.
Yes,
So
that's true. It's those early trucks, though, that will also get people's notice. And so that's why I was asking about what time those are coming in, and if you could limit those to 9 o'clock, it's probably not a problem.
Yeah, when you're dealing with commercial carriers, they don't.
1 minute before their alarm goes off is bad.
Right. Got it.
Along the property line with Rock and Soren, right now your drawing shows one tree, I'm assuming, in there. Is there more full-size trees in there, or?
that's actually a very dense hedgerow along those two properties, but we're certainly willing to supplement, or as staff mentions, combine what's there with some fencing. There's enough elbow room between where we're proposing the parking. We pulled it close to the building because it should be close to the building, and that left us with some open area that I anticipate we'll probably end up with underground stormwater attenuation in that belt, but certainly we can have fencing and vegetation in that zone too. So
Is there room for trees though, so they would help hide the building, cut the noise?
definitely, yeah. I mean, between the parking lot and the rock, these parking spaces are 18 feet. So,
40 feet.
there's 18 and 25, almost 30 feet. So there's good elbow room there for additional plantings, fence, landscaping in that zone.
The only reason I'd recommend trees over there is then you have to fiddle with cutting the roof height. Because the trees will break it up.
I think as a comment for you, for DP though, is that, a well-developed plan of how you're going to develop that space, how it mitigates the negative impacts on the neighbors would be really good for us to hear.
Yep.
And for the neighbors to come and say that if you talk to them and they're
Right.
satisfied
Right.
would go a tremendous distance, I think, for people
I
at this
believe,
table.
I believe Mr. Rock is on the call this evening, so we may be able to,
He can dispute that fact if you like.
well, he's
I know.
so get a chance to actually hear from him this evening.
Wanna listen?
As staff noted, we'll,
Tom.
Mr. Rock's got-
Yeah. Yeah, hi, John. If you would, I think we know your address and all, but for formality purposes, if you would state your name and address for the record, please.
Sure, John Rock, 67 Kirby Lane. So I have a couple of questions. I didn't hear the feet you said between the lot and our fence. Looking at the diagram today, and I may have measured it wrong. Is it 15 feet between the fence and where the first parking spot is?
Measure that for you.
It looks like about half inch.
It's 30.
These 35.
Yeah, it looks to be about 35 or 36 feet between the head end of the parking and the property line, and that it's pretty much parallel down through. So from the fence, it's almost 38 feet, but 36 to the property line.
So can you show me just again, so from right there to there, that's how far?
36 feet.
Okay, all right, then I was looking at about 15 feet. The other question I had as far as the truck noise, so we do hear the trucks still, early in the morning, we do hear them on the weekends too as well. Just wondering how that would be addressed with the trucks coming in even closer.
Well, we generally don't operate on the weekends. It'll be a rare occasion. I don't know about, if then figure out what trucks would be coming in on the weekends. We're not open. So, we have a rare occasion where,
Yeah, I mean, I definitely want to like let my dog seeing, trucks out there or trucks backing up early on.
yeah, I mean, that should be the exception, not the norm.
Okay. Yeah, it's not something that does, we do notice it.
Yeah. If we have to abide by DOT regulations. So if we have a driver out and he has to stay overnight on a Friday night, he would obviously get back some point on Saturday. But again, that's not our goal, is to have our limit overtime and not have our team out on the road on the weekends.
So you have no operations there on the weekend?
No.
Yeah.
Monday through Friday.
Well, just to reiterate what Mr. Hemmelgarn said is, when you come back for DP, this board would like to see, would really like to see the rocks and to see Jeff Soren, a statement of acceptance of the proposed solution for for both visual and sound mitigation. And we did something similar at U-Haul, and the Mr. and Mrs. Hines were very engaged with U-Haul, and they were aligned with what was being proposed. And there was they participated by video, and I seem to recall that there was even a letter of acceptance of what was being proposed. And so work with your neighbors, work on a plan, reach agreement. It's going to be really important.
I need to edit what you just said.
Okay.
Just for my own personal point, and that is that this approval, and certainly my vote, is not contingent upon the acceptance of the neighbors for your plan. They have input.
Yes.
Okay, and I'm going to modifying what you just said, but so they have input, and the board highly recommends you talk to them and work with them. But the approval is not contingent upon that. Or at least it's not my vote.
No, thank you for that clarification. I agree with that. But I think that I'd be surprised if you got ahead of it. I think you're going to be able to.
We understand.
You're going to be able to reach consensus.
Yeah, we understand the point, and be happy to talk to the neighbors.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
it's just being good neighbors.
But Scott makes a good point, is the regulations have rules of engagement. One of the things that we really try to do here in Williston is abide by the bylaws. And if you have a compliant project, that governs. But in the sake of being a good neighbor, and I think that everybody can win here.
I would just comment overall on this is, I think, a well-conceived plan to stay within the rules of the bylaws. I think, that you put the parking, which is a quieter, less intrusive, use as a buffer between the industrial use and the backyards of the neighbors. I think this is, doing as much as you can within the bylaws, and that's why I'm hopeful that, when you talk about kind of timing of the noise sources and how much there is and where it's located, I think that there's a nice it's a nice attempt here, and I appreciate that. I mean, I'm hopeful that it does meet all of the bylaws as we look at this more closely, and then, obviously, as much as I like it, had to vote no against things I've liked before because it doesn't meet it. But
So we believe that we can meet all the bylaw requirements. The one issue, of course, that's still kind of hanging, and it's a key one, is, will you be seeking a legal opinion about may a vehicle drive through a parking lot? And if so, when would that be available? Because to me, that's certainly the linchpin to this. If the legal opinion is that you may not drive through a parking lot in a residential zone, then there's no sense talking to the neighbors about fencing.
Right. Understood. So that's a topic that we're going to talk about in deliberations. And in terms of how fast should we recommend a legal opinion, what's the typical turnaround anyway?
So, it varies. If the DRB issues a decision tonight and it says seek a legal opinion, we reach out to the town attorney, very soon. And then I would hope we could hear from him by the end of the year, but with the holidays, maybe it's in early January. When we have that opinion back, we can communicate it to the DRB as other business and send a copy to the applicant, and that would give us a clear direction. Can this move forward to discretionary permit?
Okay.
Paul's waiting.
David? Oh, Paul?
When you're talking about your proposed addition, that's primarily where it's gonna be office space, correct?
Correct.
So that's actually gonna be potentially a noise filter, because your equipment isn't gonna be against the back wall mounts, you're actually gonna have
Correct.
15,000 square foot absorbing noise inside the building before it goes.
Or if there was equipment there or industrial use, might be the powder coating area, which is,
Powder coating or just shelving.
or storage, not, and it may not be office, but it wouldn't be,
But what I'm trying to say,
Production.
so you're gonna basically have
Right, we're gonna push,
effectively a sound deadener.
right, we're gonna push manufacturing towards Commerce
Yeah, the
Street
factory's not
and
moving.
move
Factory's
the
gonna work.
office on the other side.
Okay,
yeah. And actually, all of the office space that's on Commerce now
it's gonna
is
flip over.
gonna flip over, and manufacturing will be moving more toward Commerce.
Okay.
David?
No, I'm good.
You're good? Lisa?
Good.
one clarification on the parking. You mentioned 96 employees and 100 parking spaces here. So this parking lot is solely for employee parking? How many drive-up customers do you have that are parking in the parking lot and walking into the building?
So it would serve both, but as Mr. Simard said, right now they also have leased parking just across the street on Mr. Lake's property. So not the ice cream shop, but the behind Bearing Specialties, there's some area there, big gravel parking lot where additional parking is available. So
For employees?
Yes.
So customers, this is where I'm getting at.
Right, so-
Where are the customers parking on that plan, and where do they walk from where they park their car to get in the building?
They would come in where the entrance will have to be on that side for all employees and customers. So our lobby will actually move to that side of the building.
Yeah, we anticipate that they'll be on the Williston Road corner end of the building, would be for visitors, customers, non-employee entrance, and the employee entrance would probably be a little bit farther to the south down that west wall, to have those two separate, and there probably will end up, based on the length, at least an emergency exit farther to the south, just to have enough exit points on that face of the building. So, but the key, as you park in the lot, I anticipate the visitors will be in those first few spaces near the building. And that the entry point would be for the offices right there as you come off Williston Road. And then employees would enter the building a little farther to the south. So this would be the kind of public corner of the building. That means this would be where anyone visiting would park. And then this access point would be employees. And then there's probably going to be another access point at least down there.
So more specifically, who's parking on the far side of the drive and in the lot furthest to the west?
So employee,
Okay,
employees.
thank you.
So in terms of people who visit,
We have very, very few walk-in customers. You know, less than 1/10 of our sales are local.
So if I'm
And
hearing you
we don't
right,
sell to the public, so we don't.
they would be driving in, they'd be parking up facing the building, being able to get out of their cars and enter the building without having to cross the driveway that the trucks are going.
correct.
Okay, anything else, John?
No, I think that's it.
Scott?
But
Okay. Members of the audience participating in, by Zoom, any questions? Raise your hand.
No chats and no raised hands.
Okay. Gentlemen in the audience, do you have anything?
I'll talk with these guys later on. I have a few questions for them.
Okay.
I may have one for Emily. On the south side, would I be notified as a butter, or should I be notified as a co-applicant because I have the easement? I've given these guys an easement on the property. Should I be notified as a co-applicant or just an abutter?
That's a good question. For the record, that was Mr. Senecal speaking in the audience. So our bylaw requires that the applicant should demonstrate that they have safe legal access. So the discretionary permit would need to show that easement. I don't know, I don't think that you would have to be a co-applicant. We have instances where, people have driveway easements over someone else's land, and that person's not required to sign off on any applications. Now, you could have a private agreement that says that you want to be involved in that way, but it's the responsibility of the landowner to say that I'm attesting that I have all authority to sign off on these applications.
Al, that's a legal agreement that's recorded and logged with the town, that it's not a handshake?
No, it's a legal document.
Okay, then they've got a right to use it.
What's that?
They have a right to use it,
To use the property?
to use the easement across your property.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, okay.
No, I just thought I would be listed as a co-applicant because of that. I didn't know. Just wanted to ask the question.
Anything else, Al?
No, that's it.
Okay. Any last words?
Nope, we appreciate the input and the thorough notes from staff. You've given us good direction, and we'll await the decision whether you are going to seek a legal decision. And if that's the case, we'll eagerly await the legal decision.
Okay, great.
I'd like to thank the applicant for the extra seasonal things you do to put the smiles on the people that drive by there.
Glad to do it.
It really adds a little bit to the area.
Good, thank you.
Even though you're not in the gateway district.
You don't have to call it public art either.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your time.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we're gonna close DP 24-07 at 7:56. All right, Emily, are we gonna do the training after deliberations?
It's up to you how you guys want to do it. We could do it now or after.
Yeah, let's do, while this is fresh, let's do deliberations now. And so we're going to go into, thank you, Scott. Welcome back to the Williston Development Review Board for Tuesday, November 28th. It is 8:23. We are out of deliberative session. Is there a motion for DP 24-07?
Yes. As authorized by WDB 6.6.3, I, Scott Riley, move that the Williston Development Review Board, having reviewed the application submitted and all accompanying materials, including the recommendations of the town staff and the advisory boards required to comment on this application by the Williston Development Bylaw, and having heard and duly considered the testimony presented at the public hearing of November 28, 2023, accept the recommendations for DP 24-07 and authorize this application to move forward to discretionary permit review. We do have a couple of adjustments to the recommendations that we need to make note of. On number 2B, WDB 13.8, provide trip generation data. A traffic study is required. Number 2D, WDB 15, provide a sidewalk along the developments Williston Road and Commerce Street. Number 2E, WDB 16, a snow storage plan in compliance with 16.6, a solid waste plan in compliance with WDB 16.7, the requirement for supplemental screening hedge around the dumpsters is not required, in addition to the fence/wall.
Scott, do you want to read that last sentence of 2B? There's a new one we added on the screen.
I'm sorry, yes, I do, right? And number 2B, WDB 13.8, provide trip generation data. A traffic study is required. We are adding a sentence at the end of that paragraph: loading areas not permitted in front of the 35-foot front yard setback per WDB 36.3.4. Okay, and we did H, correct? We're on H. Okay. WDB 23, so number 2H, WDB 23-23, the landscaping plan must provide a type 2 supplemented with a type 3 buffer along 67 Kirby Lane, 83 Kirby Lane, and 5182 Williston Road. A screening fence and or berm are required along the residential properties. And number 4A will be struck. And that is it. Okay.
Okay, thank you, Scott. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Dave Turner seconds. Any discussion? Yay or nay? Nate Andrews.
Yay.
Paul Christensen.
Yay.
Lisa Braden Harder.
Yay.
Scott Riley.
Yay.
Dave Turner.
Yay.
John Hemmelgarn.
Yay.
The chair is a yay, 7 in favor, none opposed. Motion carries. Is there a motion to approve the meeting minutes of November 15?
November 14th, it says here. Yes.
Hold on a second here. Thank you. Okay, my little cheat sheet was off. Is there a motion to approve the minutes of November 14th?
So moved.
Thank you, Lisa. Is there a second?
Second.
John seconds it. Is there any discussion? Yay or nay? Nate?
Yay.
Paul?
Yay.
Lisa?
Yay.
Scott?
Yay.
Dave?
Yay.
John?
Yay.
Chair is a yay, 7 in favor, none opposed. The meeting minutes of November 14th are approved. Okay, next on the agenda is DRB training, and I will turn it over to staff.
Alrighty. So in October 2023, the select board adopted a set of amendments to the Unified Development Bylaws, including provisions for inclusionary zoning as an alternative to growth management. And then there's some other amendments to the bylaws. The purpose of tonight is to give you guys an overview of these changes to the bylaw, and then have any follow-up question and discussion. So before we dive into the inclusionary zoning and growth management stuff, I want to note that there was a change to amend the density provisions of Chapter 19. Allow adaptive reuse projects that are exempt from residential density. Projects in mixed use density that include more than 30%.
Can you stop right there?
Yeah.
And go back to that first, the adaptive reuse use is exempt, so I read that, exempt from density requirements.
Yeah.
What does that mean?
So that means this was written like for the hotel conversion type of project where you have an existing commercial, non-residential building and you want to change the use to residential. You're not subject to the density requirement.
Okay, so I'm a developer, right? So I look at a building, go, how many units can I get in this? So I go find a building in Williston, a couple of office buildings sitting over there, and based on that statement, I can cram in as many units as I possibly can. No limit.
No limit. So form-based code district no longer has a density expressed in favor. Fit as many as you can fit in your building that meets the form-based code building requirements and parking requirements.
200 square foot micro apartments, I can,
Theoretically, yes.
that is going to come back and bite you, you know where. I mean, that's going to be interesting to see what happens with that, because that's the way I read it too.
This was written, so there's a couple hotels like on Hurricane Lane in Gateway
Yeah.
where the residential density is really low. And we get a lot of questions about converting those into residential.
Yeah.
And then there's a couple other properties. This is only in districts that allow residential. So you wouldn't be able to do an adaptive reuse in the industrial zoning districts.
But Peter Judge owns those two big office buildings sitting right at Top's Corner that you could do this with.
With the form-based code and with, yes, and then this is, another level of that.
That would also be true, say, the upper floor of the buildings around the green.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Yes.
Maple Tree Place.
That'll happen at some point.
That's gotta happen at some point. I wish it had already.
That'll happen at some point.
That would be such an awesome, but an apartment.
Yeah. And the green itself.
I know.
Yeah, I know.
I know with the pending village bylaw amendment, the hack talked about, the Historic and Design Committee talked about a unit limit on the size and its configuration. So basically you couldn't chop up a house into really bizarre unit configurations. And I'm
You
maybe.
mean like the fort in Colchester?
Like Burlington, like all of Burlington.
Right, exactly. But
Shove a bunch of.
it would be a future thing if the planning commission wanted to add in, a minimum size or minimum configuration requirement for other zoning districts. So
Interesting.
the other change to the density provisions, residential projects in mixed use that include 30% or more units as affordable qualify for a density bonus. Previously, that standard was just in the residential zoning district. Catamount Summerfield as an example. And clarify that transfer of development rights only applies in receiving areas within the growth center outside of the Taft Corners Form-Based Code District.
So that means that it's got to come in from outside and only can come in from outside to the Taft's Corners development area.
No, it can come in from outside, and it's areas in growth center, but not form-based code, which is essentially the annex, some land around Walmart and Home Depot, and then like where the Allenbrook School is. So those are the only areas that.
Those are the only areas that you can now do TDRs
You can't do TDR to form-based code district because there's no more
because there's no density.
Next change, allow mobile vendors, i.e. food trucks, accessory to non-residential parking lots with an administrative permit. Some folks may remember going through the whole DRB rigmarole for a hot dog cart outside Goodwill. We get a lot of these requests, and this would require an administrative permit, so it would not come to the DRB, but the administrator would be looking at some of the same standards in terms of solid waste and litter, pedestrian flow, maintaining parking, etc. Allow food and beverage manufacturers to have a larger indoor eating area and a larger outdoor patio. Recent approvals under the old standard were Goodwater Brewery and Burlington Beer. Burlington Beer is no more in Williston. They're now in Burlington. Larger outdoor patio. So during COVID, we were able to give these food and beverage manufacturers temporary larger areas, and now we wanted to codify it permanently. Additional changes to encourage solar canopies in parking lots, amend the number of members and name for the Historic and Architectural Advisory Committee, allow EV charging infrastructure with an administrative permit, and clarify that temporary events are now regulated by an ordinance and not the bylaw. And require demolition sites to be secured and erosion measures in place.
So how big is the HDAC
So
as
they're
opposed to
five.
the HAAC?
Yeah, they are 5 members instead of 7. All town boards, including you guys, are 7 members. DRB and Planning Commission have an alternate. For years, there were vacancies that we just haven't been able to fill. I mean, you can't hire people these days, let alone get volunteers on boards. The name change reflects their changing scope. Now that there's form-based code, they're not providing review, and you guys aren't even reviewing new buildings in that district. And a lot of the standards in Chapter 22 as they exist today are about wayfinding to principal entrances, pedestrian connectivity, and they felt that they didn't like the name being called hackers, and the design more encapsulates architecture, but it also encapsulates site design that they review as well.
So by changing the name, it'll make it easier to get people to volunteer for it.
Maybe, yeah. They won't put it active.
Is it, I mean, it's interesting that this come up here because with the form-based code, there are projects that, that we don't hear about until we read it in the Observer. Is there a way, I mean, would it be appropriate to kind of do a periodic update of form-based code projects to allow the Development Review Board to actually be familiar with all the development that's being proposed?
Yeah, I think we can do that, and maybe it's just part of your agenda packet. We could just copy paste things that once they get uploaded to the website, we can put it on the next DRB agenda. So it all goes on the town's website, public records and documents, agendas and minutes.
So look it up if you want to know.
But look it up if you want to have it hot off the press, and then I think Andrew and I can work together on getting something in your packets that's just, probably as part of the agenda, the summaries of what they are. So we upload them, and then a couple weeks after they're uploaded, you'll see when the project review committee meets, which is zoning administrator, public works and fire, and the applicant.
So that 6-story thing they're talking about building, that's gonna be form?
Yeah, so that had its project review committee meeting, or no, it has its project review committee coming up on December 15th. The permit will not be issued until sewer allocation is purchased. So what the process is, Matt writes a determination letter after that meeting that says, here's the couple minor things you need to show on your final plans before I'll sign off on your certificate of conformity, and you have to pay all your fees. So by sometime next year, they'll have a permit. The 6th story, so form-based code only allows 5 stories. State law recently changed to allow an extra story, and they're utilizing that provision to get the 6th story.
So think about that. In front of the TD building, in that green space, but in front, 6-story building.
It's gonna block the lake views. I can't have that.
Well,
Big change, big change. It's gonna change the streetscape.
It definitely is gonna change this.
Right.
yeah, but what happens is, that, when we look at Williston today, and then we look at Williston 20 years from now, that's just gonna be the first building
Yeah.
that started
Yep.
started the sequence of activity.
It's true.
Because all they're gonna do is lobby the hell out of the state to next number will be 10 stories and then 20 stories.
Well, maybe, or
And then I'll be able to build my apartment building down on my farm.
Maybe.
maybe.
Let's put it underground.
I mean, in terms of clarification, John, I mean, we don't want Emily to add pages to our packet every time. I mean, maybe just of like, hey, there's updates out there kind
Yeah.
of line, and
Yeah, I
so
don't even
follow
know all the
this link.
details of it. I just would like to know that the
Just
the
something's
list of
happening.
applications that have come in. That's just my suggestion.
Yeah, I think what we do is probably these descriptions that are uploaded here are similar to the DRB descriptions where it's like what it is and where it is. And we'd probably just copy paste that onto like your agendas that go in your packet.
Yeah.
Like other business FYI form-based code projects.
Sounds good.
Put it on the email too that we send out.
I think we should
Our
move-
meetings. You
I
can
think we should
trust the link.
give the DRB to them.
You want-
Yeah, that'd be
Let them
great.
do all this shit.
Okay,
Yeah.
good.
Do it all.
So inclusionary zoning amendments to chapter 11, favorite chapter of the bylaw. There's essentially 3 tracks now. Either a project is, due to its size or number of affordable units, is exempt from growth management. It's going inclusionary, it's providing a certain number of inclusionary units, or it's full market rate and it's going through that old school growth management track, but with a payment in lieu requirement. So small projects that create 4 or fewer units are exempt from both growth management and inclusionary zoning. This means that you guys might see some applications that go right from pre-app to discretionary permit. Medium-sized projects that create 5 to 9 homes must either provide one of those homes as deed restriction or go through the growth management process, but that fee in lieu is not required. So you might see something go from pre-app to discretionary permit, providing that 1 unit affordable, or it would go to growth management annually in March. Projects that have 10 or more homes must meet the inclusionary zoning requirements, which is 15% of the homes are affordable at 100% the area median income, or 10% at 80% of the area median income, or an equivalent mixture. And then if you are 10 or more units, but you're all market rate, then you must go through the growth management process and pay in lieu. And that fee is tiered based on the number of units that are in the project. So for example, a development with 60 homes would pay a fee of about $365,000. Those pay in lieu fees came from looking at what neighboring communities have charged and what seems reasonable. The Planning Commission spent a lot of time deliberating a fee, and they didn't want it to be too high that it discourages anybody from building, as was experienced in Burlington. You know, if we see a lot of utilization of it, maybe then it's ratcheted up. But if you're having no development, then you have no data to base the fee number on.
You have no units too.
You'd have no units, so you'd be exacerbating the housing problem.
This eliminates now then the exemptions that we used to debate in growth management for the little projects that didn't get
Like
enough.
Right.
four you were allowed per year.
Right,
Right, because here, if you're under, and all those were usually just one
Right.
buildings.
Yeah.
right,
you know.
right.
Yeah, so before those exemptions, you're exactly right, John, you had to go to growth management in March and ask for it. Now they're just baked into the bylaw, those exemptions.
So can I got a question for you. If you, it says on the larger projects, if you comply with either the 15% at 100% or 10% at the 80%, and it skirts growth management, does that mean that's not taken out of the 80 units per year? That's just, it's around that.
It's around that.
So if every developer, every person who wanted to build one of these buildings complied with this inclusionary zoning, we could have an unlimited number, I'm exaggerating, but we could have an unlimited number of apartments being built in a year.
Yeah, we could saturate the sewer system in a year.
Well, right.
Right, yep, and that would be.
And that's going to be the limiting factor.
That would be the regulator.
Yeah, that's going to be.
Yeah.
It is in fact what we're gonna run up against this year because, Chris Snyder's The Annex just purchased its phase 1 sewer allocation. So projects like Michaud, Summerfield, the 6-story Jeff Mungen building might have to be waiting until July 1 to get allocation.
And what happens if the developer who meets all these rules turns around and sues the town of Williston for now obstructing what they put in writing saying this is okay?
That's pretty well tested in court.
What?
I think that's pretty well tested in court.
It wouldn't be the first time that
No.
Williston's sewer ordinances landed in
Yeah.
litigation.
I'm just curious that this could turn into a very financial, lucrative business for a good Esquire.
Maybe.
Fortunately, that's something that the DRB has to worry about.
We don't have to worry about it.
Right,
It
right.
won't be us. In fact, we could give the rest of the DRB the new, whatever they call themselves, the H-stack or whatever. They could do all of the cases.
Emily, and if anybody wants to tell me to stop asking questions.
No, I had the same one as you, the last, this one is a new one. 'Cause
So the, one of the other questions that I noticed in chapter 11, when I was reading that, it seems to say that any area that allows a single family home now allows a quad. Is that correct?
Not a quad, a duplex.
Nah.
I think in sewer service area,
Anything in the sewer service area, it goes to a quad, doesn't it?
that's S100, yeah.
That's what I got out of it. It says 3 or 4, not 2.
Duplexes, so I'm jumping over to the DHCD memo. Duplexes and small unit uses.
All right, so which one are you jumping to?
The one that says
The Vermont one?
Yep, the Vermont. Yeah. Municipalities
and
must
small
allow, anywhere single homes are allowed for year-round use.
Yeah.
In areas served by municipal water and sewer, must allow multi-unit dwellings with 3 or 4 units to be permitted.
There you go.
1 unit to 4.
Bingo.
So, read that again, please. In areas served by municipal water and sewer, municipalities must allow multi-unit dwellings with 3 or 4 units to be permitted, not conditional use.
So Williston has complied with this.
So this is state. This is not Williston bylaw. This is
Right.
state.
This is the state legislature changing the zoning statute. And anywhere town bylaws conflict, this preempts.
Yeah.
Williston zoning complies with this already because in the residential zoning districts and our mixed-use commercial districts, we've allowed multifamily buildings of any size. We're silent. It's only in the ag rural district where we say up to a duplex.
But I mean, but we could, Alex across the street with his duplex could have put a quad in there. Could put a quad in there.
Correct.
Oh, boy, that would make Mr. Pinter mad.
Theoretically.
Not theoretically.
No, not theoretically.
You gotta
Actually,
get your permits, so everything's theoretical until your permit is approved.
You're right, but we, this board tries to follow the law, and the law is sitting right here in front of us saying, it used to be a duplex that you could put in, now it's 40.
yeah.
And theoretically, every single house down this road could be a fourplex.
That's a Roger.
So I think there's in the state exemptions, you can't double dip the use and the density. So another thing that state law preempts is that density to 5 units per acre. So our interpretation of things in the village are, we've always allowed multi-unit structures of any size, 2 to however many your density analysis allows. So that's a confusing thing because the state law defines it as a use, but it's more of like a structure form. So you're in the village, the current density is 2 units per acre. Now state law preempts it up to 5, but that 5 unit per acre still limits how many units you can fit on your lot.
Not according to that, it doesn't.
I think there's a couple different interpretations of
A
it.
good lawyer's gonna be.
Oh, boy, Emily, I mean, to me, that's where you you can put one house, now you can put 4 units. Based on this state VSA statute. I mean, and again, I'm not trying to argue with you, but this is a question that's going to come up quick.
Yep. So we're working on, probably early 2024, another round of bylaw amendments in response to the state exemptions.
It's interesting.
And that's why it came up in the Glazer application with the whole density preemption.
Okay.
Shifting back to wrap up on growth management.
Yep.
Recording in progress.
Did this select board approve plates?
Yes.
I did.
The select board has approved these.
Huh.
These are,
No, he's saying Glazer.
Did they?
Well, it just disconnected, But our meeting's still up. Yeah. Okay. Great.
Oh, because we're not in deliberations. Yeah, okay. Oh, yeah, that was weird. So in terms of growth management, the affordable housing criteria has gone away. Because if you're going full market rate, you're not proposing any affordable units. Those criteria are only for projects that aren't proposing affordable homes. The conserve energy criteria, our favorite one, has changed to include more realistic options, more opportunities to gain points in that category. And design for context was eliminated because it didn't add significant value. So come March, you're going to see a different set of criteria, different points, and no affordable housing metric. Now, for existing vested projects that have been scored under the old systems, they still have to uphold that prior vested approval in their score.
Mhm.
That would be things like Summerfield and the Annex.
Right, this does not apply to that.
And the table is going to look different too. So that big scary 11 by 17 table, it had a column for affordable and had a column for market rate. Now it's all market rate. And those previous affordable units will denote them in a certain way. So that table will look different come March as well.
I can't wait.
So back to the Act 47 state preemptions. Municipal parking minimum requirements also got preempted. And then some other things about hotels and housing assistance, and then the density metrics as well, based on in sewer service area or outside sewer service area.
Interesting.
And I noticed there's something there about limits on local appeals. Is that anything that,
Question.
I wasn't totally understanding kind of what they were getting at there.
Appeals of decisions of the administrative officer adds residents to the list of potential individuals that may, in combination, appeal with a 10-person petition. The amendment also prohibits 10-person appeals for character of the area if the project has an affordable housing component. So I think my understanding is the adding residents is designed to encapsulate renters as opposed to just property owners. And then also, prevent character of the area appeals on affordable housing projects. A lot of these in the memo, so it's a 9-page memo from the state online. I think Melinda gave you only a couple of the pages. It's really the parking, the density that come most into play in terms of what the DRB is going to be looking at. And we may have a couple of applications before our bylaw is amended to respond to these state exemptions.
So until that happens, are we required to, is this board then tasked with kind of looking at these state changes and then, and making the qualitative judgments that's an allowable exception or change to the written bylaw?
Possibly, but it would all be teed up for you in the staff report and conditions of approval. And if we need to get a legal opinion, like we'll get one for the Glazer application if that moves forward under their other concepts.
Right.
But we'll queue it up for you guys.
Thank you.
So no legal opinion back on that yet?
Not to my knowledge.
So is this saying with this new plan, with the extra floor and stuff, that the guys who are doing the golf course system and their next expansion, they could have a 6-story building out there, right?
No, so the maximum building height in the residential zoning district is 30 feet. And right now, the bylaw is silent on number of stories in that zoning district. So your guess is as good as mine as to what extra story means in a district that only limits height based on number of feet.
It's a form-based code.
It's only
It's form-based code where that applies
Only in
the
the
most.
home-based code area.
Mm-hmm.
Are you sure that it's only form-based code area? I mean, that
That
doesn't,
isn't the way I,
The extra story, I
That doesn't
believe,
say that.
is town-wide.
yeah.
But
Yes.
what is extra story in a zoning district that only limits height based on number of feet?
And I was commenting on Paul and the 6 stories,
Yeah, the
and
story.
that's form-based code area.
So
okay,
if you
so
could get 5 stories into 30 feet, then you could put another one on top of that.
Well, but I think a standard story is what, 10 to 12 feet, right?
Right.
So
It's essentially a 3-story building.
Well, and then it's gonna
Somebody
go to a
buy it.
4-story building.
Got another
Yeah.
12.
It's another, there's something else for the lawyer thing, actually.
Right.
That's a
You do it as a
lawyer
15-foot
question.
high story and have penthouses there.
But that was what,
Definitely
that's
like
what I was trying to
this
get
for
at, was
questions and answers.
they could put the extra story out in
I think you could,
in the other
based on what they're
zones.
saying here, as long as you're providing affordable housing, you can put an extra story on anything.
That's my point. So if these guys go affordable,
Interpretation.
the state trumps the town, right?
Yes.
Yes.
So in other words, a builder could come in, look at the state code, and say, we're doing 100% affordable. We're going to go maximum the state allows, no matter what the city said, no matter what the town says. Correct?
That's the way I read it.
That's
But-
what I thought.
But I think everybody here knows that it's gonna go in front of an attorney and a court, and it's gonna get hammered out.
Yeah, that's
So
fine.
stay tuned.
Stay
Stay
tuned.
tuned.
The environmental court is gonna get very busy.
Or if it's in the form-based code zone, it'll just get passed.
I'm going to call my buddy and tell him to move to Vermont. Tell him there's contracts up in the future for him up here.
Well, I mean, the intent is to promote affordable housing.
Drive housing.
And so,
This is gonna do it.
and, the attempts have been made in the past and it wasn't working. And this is a new try.
But there's no aspect of this when, if someone takes advantage of the inclusionary housing and it's the market that decides who rents that. Anyone can go rent it. There's no one's looking at the income of the renters or who's buying, right?
That's not true. When our daughter just bought a income-based property in South Burlington, and you have in your deed, if you were to rent the unit, the person has to meet the criteria of affordability.
Was that specific to South Burlington? Because I didn't read anything like that in this.
It's in here.
It is?
It's in the inclusionary zoning.
It's South Burlington just adopted.
It's new. Okay, hasn't been there before. It's there now.
There's
Okay.
So
there's safeguards on that.
what I didn't go over, WDB 11.3, so if your project is going the inclusionary route, there are enhanced requirements for its perpetual affordability in terms of deed restrictions, resale restrictions, rent increases. Are affordable dwellings required to be sold rented to income qualified renters? Yes, they must be marketed for rent lease to households within the same income bracket as the dwelling was intended for.
11.3.6.
11.36, yep. So there is a little bit of income qualification in the new bylaw requirement, but it's not quite as robust as something like what CHT does, where it's a whole application project and you're basically matched with something in your bracket.
And will you guys have to monitor that? Do you get reports from the seller?
That's where the rub comes, right there.
If the development includes dwellings affordable to those earning 80% AMI, those dwellings must be sold meeting the respective income qualifications. So it would be in that, the way affordables are done now is there's a calculation done before the closing, and then this would add in that income qualification. So existing units that are sale units that are affordable, they have to do this calculation and get sign off on the zoning administrator before they can close. That shows that the price is still within that limit.
That there's easy safeguards what Emily just described for a sale. Somebody's got to police the rentals, and that's where it's going to fall between the cracks.
Absolutely, it's going to fall through the cracks.
Yeah.
So once you buy it and you rent it. You rent it out to people because nobody's going to check on it.
Well, we did add another person to the department, so Melinda's role is energy and community development, AKA housing planner. So it'll be
Oh, she'll be,
under her purview.
that person will be thrilled to have to follow that stuff up.
Anything else, Emily?
Not that I can think of.
Any questions?
Matt mentioned something the other night about the idea of a dwelling unit equivalent changing from not getting rid of the half. But
Yeah.
it's still in here as a half.
It's
Or
still in the
two
bylaw.
bedroom.
Yep, DOE is still in the bylaw for the purposes of density and growth management. Part of our Act 47 cleanup would be to get rid of the DOE. It adds confusion if we're getting the higher density that we want. And it would also essentially cut that 80 DOE growth target in half, because 80 DOE could be 160 studio or one-bedroom units. But now if it's just dwellings, a dwelling is a dwelling, so it essentially restrict that 80 growth target.
Isn't that now being more restrictive?
Yes, in terms of that 80 DOE growth cap, but now that there's so many routes around it, in terms of small project exemptions or inclusionary zoning, that we'd see it as kind of balancing itself out.
I would toss that back at you and say, if you're trying to promote housing, why would you do that?
Well, the only units that
You're
are
dialing
going,
back 80 units.
the only units that are going in that 80 DOE growth target are market rate, fully market rate
Understood.
projects.
Understood.
But
But you're
it's-
still trying to build housing. So you gotta have, and housing encompasses the entire range. It's not just affordable.
Yeah.
It's everything. And if there are people who show up and want to write the check, which I can't imagine they're gonna want to do because it's expensive, but if they want to write the check, they are providing housing. And that ultimately is the goal. From the whole range, through the whole, from top to bottom and affordable to unaffordable.
Well, it's still going to be a bylaw amendment that has to go through the planning commission and select board, so who knows what happens with DOE. And that fee is tiered. Part of the planning commission's working through it was the more units you have in the project, the more realistic it should be to be able to include some affordable. Whereas we've already had, so like, for example, the Michaud project with 15 units, they're going to be coming to growth management in March and asking to have their 3 units affordable be made market rate so that they can pay in lieu and get out of that affordability requirement. So smaller projects, the fee might be more feasible. Larger projects, you might be able to find another way. Is the thinking.
Okay. Any other questions?
How are the sewer allocation fees determined? Did they increase a lot this year?
That's
Or
a
next
great
year.
question.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that. What was Nate?
How are the sewer allocation fees determined, and are they increasing a lot next year?
I'm not as versed in the sewer allocation ordinance. I know it is based off of whatever the cost is at the plant, what they charge. And then, basing it off of what it costs to connect. I'm sure they go up a little bit each year because everything goes up in cost a little bit each year. And then I know if you buy allocation there, you pay a whole time.
So I will tell you that it is not based off what it costs at the plant.
Okay.
It is based off a standard, very similar to the IBE codes on, it's not that, but it is a, if you go talk to Bruce, he has a book that he opens up and says, okay, you have a hotel, hotels have a toilet and a sink and it's X. We just went through that with the most recent Finney Hotel too. And there was a big argument. There was a big argument because we have a hotel across the street that was X minus, and it was a perfect example of an actual flow, and yet his book was saying it was going to be X plus, and so the argument was, well, here's real world data, and this is out of a book, we think you should use the railroad data, and then ultimately that's what happened. So that's where it comes from.
Yeah.
The town, so that's where it's based on.
But you're talking about usage.
Well, but that's how you pay for it.
Well, there's a
Based
couple
off the
different
usage.
fees, and that's a good point, that there's
That's calculating the usage.
buying your allocation based on your usage.
He's.
Then when
he's
you
talking
actually go
about
to hook
unit
up,
cost.
there's different hookup
That was
fee.
what his question was.
And then once you're a
Okay.
user, then you pay your,
Understand,
That
when you
metered
go and
amount.
pay for it, it's based off of Bruce O'Gallagher's book.
I understand.
It's a.
That wasn't his question.
He doesn't like the fact that the sewer system operates like an auto mechanic. This job's gonna take 4 hours. You know they're gonna do it 2 minutes, but they're gonna charge you 4 hours labor.
Okay, any other questions? Is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Is there a
So
second?
moved.
See you second?
Second?
Okay, any discussion?
No.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you, everyone.